back to my YouTube channel. My name is Jacinta. It is your first time here. Thank you for stopping by. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys how I made this beautiful guy you see me putting on right now. How I made this gown. If this is what you're interested in learning, kindly watch till the end. And if you're yet to subscribe, please do what to hit on that subscribe button and also turn on the notification bell so you get notified whenever I upload a new video. So without wasting much time, let's get started with the tutorial. So these are the materials I'm going to be using for this tutorial. The fabric is crepe and I have 3 yards here. Starting off with the front pattern drafting, I'll place my tape on the tip of my pattern paper and I will measure 2 inches downwards, make a mark there and I will square across, and I will label that line my shoulder line. After that, I will place my tape on my shoulder line. I'll measure downwards to 10 inches, which is my bust line, and 16 inches, which is my half length. I'll make a mark there and I will square across. Then I will label that my bust line and half length. Going back to my shoulder line, I'll divide my shoulder measurement by 2, which gave me 8 inches. So I'll mark 8 inches on my shoulder line. Then on that point where I marked half of my shoulder measurement, I'll come down by 1.5 inches for my shoulder slope. I'll mark 3 inches for my neck width. Then I'll connect it to 1.5 inches I came down by for my shoulder slant. Placing my tape on the 1.5 inches I came down by, I will measure 7.5 inches downward for my armhole level. Then I'll use a straight line to connect it like this. Then on that point where the armhole level ended, I'm going to extend the line and that becomes my chest line. So I'll just label that my chest line. After that, I'm going to find the midpoint of this straight line that I've drawn. Then on that midpoint, I'll come in by ½ inch. I'll also find the quarter of my bust circumference. That is my bust circumference divided by 4 inches. By 4, sorry. Then I'll mark that on my chest line and I'll use my armhole curve to connect from my shoulder slope to the ½ inch I came in by to the quarter of my bust circumference that I marked on my chest line, just like the way you see me doing in the video, and that forms my armhole curve. The next thing I'll do now is to mark my dart. To do this, I'll place my tape on my bust line and I'll mark 3.5 inches inwards, which is my nipple to nipple measurement or my bust span, and I'll also mark 3.5 inches on my half length. Then I'll connect with a straight line. On the half length, I'll come in by ½ inch on both sides of the dart line. Then I'll connect it to the 3.5 inches I marked on my bust line, just like the way you see me doing. Then I'll use my curved ruler to connect from the midpoint of my armhole level to the 3.5 inches I marked on my bust line, just like the way you see me doing. This dart is called an ordinary princess dart. On the side front, I'll come downwards by 2 inches from my bust line. I'll make a mark there and I'll connect it to the 3.5 inches I marked on my bust line like this. This is for my bust dart. After that, I will start inputting quarter of my round body measurements. On my chest line and on my bust line, I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4 and I'll add extra 1 inch for sewing allowance. Then on my half length, I will mark quarter of my waist circumference and I will replace the 1 inch dart and I'll also add extra 1 inch allowance for joining. Then I will connect it. After connecting my measurements, I will go back to my shoulder line and mark my neckline. So this neckline is a curved neckline, a normal basic neckline. It also has a keyhole underneath. For this kind of neckline, what I will do is to mark 3 inches downwards for my neck depth and I'll connect it to my neck width of 3 inches like this. On the point where my neck depth stopped, I'm going to come in by ½ inch like this. I'm going to come in by ½ inch like this. Then I'm going to measure the depth of the keyhole, how deep I want it to be. So I marked 3.5 inches. Then I'll find the midpoint of that 3.5 inches and I'll come in by 1 inch. Just like the way you see me doing, I'll come in by 1 inch. Then I'll connect it with my curved ruler like this. When I cut this on my fabric and open it up, you're going to see the full effect. I'm just going to cut this out so I'll have space on my table and be able to close the bust dart. To close my bust dart, I'm going to make this 2 inches line that I've drawn to meet the bust line like this, so that when I open it up, I can have the midpoint of the 2 lines. So I'll press it down. After doing that, I'll open it. You can see the midpoint, so I'll slash it open. And I'll also cut open this dart line on my armhole so that I can easily close my bust dart. After that, I'll use my masking tape to hold it down and I'll label my center front and side front. Then I'll go ahead and cut it out. This ½ inch I'm adding on the shoulder is for the joining on the front and back shoulder. I'm done cutting the front upper pattern. The next thing I'm going to do now is to cut the back upper pattern. I've gone ahead to label 2 inches downwards from the tip of my pattern paper, and I'm going to label that my shoulder line. Placing my tape on my shoulder line, I'm going to measure 10 inches downwards, which is my bust line, and 14 inches downwards, which is my back half length. I'll make a mark there and I'll square across, and I will label that my bust line and half length. Going back to my shoulder line, I'm going to mark half of my shoulder measurement, which is 8 inches. On that point, I'm going to come down by 1.5 inches for my shoulder slope. Then I'm going to also mark 3 inches for my neck width, and I'll connect it to the 1.5 I came downwards by to form my shoulder slant. Placing my tape on that 1.5 inches I marked for my shoulder slope, I'm going to mark 7.5 inches downwards for my armhole level. Then on the point where the armhole level stop, I'm going to extend the line like this. I'm going to extend the line, and that becomes my chest line. Then I'm going to use a straight line to connect the armhole level. Then I'm going to find the midpoint of this armhole level, and I'll come in by ½ inch. I'll mark quarter of my bust circumference on my chest line. Then I'll use my armhole curve to connect from my shoulder slope to the ½ inch I came in by to the quarter of my bust circumference that I marked on my chest line to form my armhole curve. The next thing I'm going to do now is to mark my darts. So I'll place my tape on my bust line, and I'll come in by 3.5 inches, which is my nipple to nipple measurement. I'll also do the same on my half length and connect it to a straight line. Then on my half length, I'm going to mark ½ inch on both sides of my dart line, then connect it to the 3.5 inches I marked on my bust line like this. Then I'm going to use my curve ruler to connect from the midpoint of my armhole curve to meet the 3.5 inches I marked on my bust line like this. After that, I'm going to mark my neck depth of 2 inches, and I'll connect it to the 3 inches neck width that I marked. I'm going to come in by ½ inch on my half length to avoid zipper bulge. Then I will connect it to my neck depth. After that, I'll divide my bust circumference by 4, and I'll mark it on my chest line and on my bust line, and I'll also add 1 inch sewing allowance. And on my half length, I'm going to divide my waist circumference by 4, and then I'll also add I'll replace the dart and I'll add 1 inch sewing allowance. Then I'll connect it, and I also added ½ inch on the shoulder for joining on the front and back shoulder. After connecting it, I'll go ahead and cut it out. So I'm going to be cutting the down part separately because I want this dress to have half length. So placing my tape on the tip of my pattern paper, I'm going to mark the length of this skirt part, which is 10 inches. So I'll mark 10 inches and I'll square across. And on the top of the pattern paper, which is my waistline, I'm going to mark quarter of my waist circumference, which is 7.5 inches, and I'll add extra 1 inch for sewing allowance. On the down part, I'll mark quarter of my hip circumference, and I'll also add 1 inch sewing allowance. After that, I'll connect it with my curved ruler, and I'll label this my front skirt. Then I'll go ahead and cut it out. I'm going to use front to cut the back skirt. The only difference between the front and the back skirt is the zip allowance. I'll add zip allowance on the center back, and on the side I'm adding extra 1 inch on the waistline for that. The back skirt will be having a dart, but the front won't have that. So after doing this, I'll connect it and I'll cut it out as well. For the back skirt dart, I'll mark 4.5 inches for the width. Then I'm marking 5 inches downwards for the depth. After cutting it out, I'm going to cut all my pattern pieces on my fabric. So while cutting it, I folded my fabric into 2. I couldn't capture while I was cutting the fabric because my battery was very low at that time, so bear with me, guys. So what you're going to do is to fold your fabric into 2 and cut each of your pattern pieces. Then you're going to add 1 inch zip allowance for the upper back pattern, and also for the center back and center front neckline. You're going to cut the facing that you used to turn it to the right side. So I was done cutting all my pieces. Next thing I'm going to do now is to turn the front neckline and the back neckline with my facing. So I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to place my facing front with the main fabric, and I'm going to mark ½ inch. Make sure you pin it. so that it won't shift. I'm going to mark half inch round like this, then I will sew it, and I'm going to notch it. I'm going to notch it so that when I open it up, it will relax. So I'll notch it and then turn it to the right side. And after that, I'm going to join the side front to the center front using half inch. And I will also do the same for the back. I'll join the center back to the side back using half inch, and I will also turn the neckline of the center back using my facing and notch it the way we did for the front neckline. For the back skirt, I'm going to trace and sew the darts. So I was done joining the side front to the center front, and I've also ironed the neckline, and this is what it looks like. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to join the front skirt to wrist. I'm going to join the front skirt using half inch, and I'll do the same for the back. So I was done joining the skirts of the front and the back, and this is what it looks like. What I will do now is to join the shoulders using half inch. Then I will join the zip side and the sides using 1 inch. Remember that was also added when we were drafting, added 1 inch sewing allowance. So that is what we are going to use to close the sides and the zip sides too. So I was done joining the sides and the zip side. Next thing I'm going to do now is to cut the skirt part. This is where we are going to be attaching the gathers. So to do this, I'm going to come down by 3.5 inches on one side, come down by 3.5 inches from the waistline. I'm going to connect it to the other side like this in a slanted form like this, and I will cut it out. I was done cutting it out. Next thing I'm going to do now is to cut the gathers. So for the length, I'm making use of the length of this remaining fabric, and then for the wideness, it does not have any specific measurement. Depending on what you have, you can make it you can times your hip measurement by 4 or 3, depending on what you have, depending on how full you want it to be. I'm going to cut a straight piece of fabric. Then for my sleeve is a simple short sleeve, so I'll just go ahead and cut out my short sleeve. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to gather the upper part of the straight fabric I've cut and attach it to this down part. Here I was trying to arrange the gathers so that it will be equal, so that one side or any part will not be fuller than the other. And I will also join the sleeve. After joining the gathers and the sleeve, I'm going to place this black bias on top of it like this, and I'm going to sew it both sides. I will do the same for the sleeve. After attaching the bias, I will close the center back and attach my zip. And that will be all for the cutting and sewing of this dress. If you find this video helpful and you've learned something new, give me a thumbs up and hit on the subscribe button. And also turn on your notification bell so you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. If you have any questions or suggestions, kindly drop it in the comment section. Thanks for watching, and see you guys in my next tutorial.